All right, so I wanted to just do some trade review. Yesterday was a pretty solid day in the trading room, and just give an example of some of the trades we took and why. And like I said, I think it was a pretty solid day, and pretty typical examples of how we like to trade. And a couple trades that are not my. I have basically two entry styles. One of them is much preferred to the other, but we sort of take what the market dictates, right? So this is basically yesterday's chart. Yesterday was the 21st, Wednesday, and currently looking at the 1 minute chart. So here's 9:30, the opening bell. Now, this was the first trade we took, and I want to just point out a couple things for why I took this trade. So one was, almost every morning when I can, I do a live YouTube. So if you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button, you'll get alerted. It's usually around 8:30 or so. I do a live pre-market analysis where I give levels that we're looking at and uh, targets for the day, etc. Right? So we had already had this 36 level as a major target, and if we kind of go out on the big picture here, let me actually get rid of this for right now. So this was a major resistance zone based off of the volume profile that we had been looking at. And we were actually looking at this as a target for the previous day. So you can see all the volume that was accumulated here. And we didn't quite make it up there. And so I sort of knew that if we hit it in the overnight session, that there wouldn't be a ton of momentum because it's overnight, and it would be a good opportunity for a short. So I actually took that short in my paper trade account. I didn't take it live because I was sleeping, and I don't like, I like to kind of trade when I trade and then totally check out and not have to think about the markets. I don't like to wake up and immediately feel like I need to check the charts. I have two little kids. I like to be kind of present with them in the evenings and in the mornings. So I just do those things in my paper account. But this actually played out perfectly, this short right off that level that we had been talking about as a target. And we knew that we had a lot of upside momentum. We kind of talked about some targets to the downside if we did come down there. Of course, we didn't, but we knew we were going to have to chew through this resistance. So I kind of anticipated that throughout this zone, it was going to be slow moving. And but that our next upside target really was 65, which we almost hit in the overnight session overnight just last night, right? We got up in the regular session to about 55, so pretty darn close. So anyway, we already had that sort of bias. We already had this price action bias of things moving upward. And so when we came into the day, we were kind of looking for that bullish push, and we started to get it. Now, here's what I want to show you. We zoom back over to this on the 1 minute chart, and let me put back on the session volume. Maybe I actually shouldn't have gone to the 1 minute chart yet. This is what I wanted to show you. So we also had this previous day, like high of the range, right? And sort of knew that that was going to be an area that if we test, that could be a meaningful area. Let's put a line there just so we kind of have that as reference, right? So we wanted to really stay above that. What we talked about in the morning analysis was that, and in the room, was that if we broke down below that line, then we'd sort of look at testing at least this previous point of control, which we tested in the overnight, but then also testing some of these lower zones. So we were watching that level, right? So with that in mind, right, here's that purple level. We opened up and we could see it was a little bit of resistance there. And when we finally broke above it with some strength, I knew that a retest of this resistance, we might not come down there. I mean, this was a really strong impulse. Now, this is a custom candle script that our members have access to, and it just paints the candles a little bit differently. So it's not, it doesn't, it's not like Heikin-Ashi candles where it actually changes, the way the candles are drawn. It just changes the criteria by which they're colored. And one of the things that it looks at is the aggressiveness of buyers and sellers. And so when these down candles are white, that means that sellers came in pretty aggressively on that first signal bar. And when the first signal bar up is teal, that means the buyers came in very aggressively. So when I saw this retracement, and at the time this zone wasn't here, so we don't need to worry about that. When I saw this retracement get kind of close to the upper end of yesterday's range and also yesterday's value, and then print this aggressive bull candle, right? All it's looking at is basically the speed of the move. Ultimately, it's not like an incredibly complicated script. It's something that you can read with your eyeballs in price action. So it's basically a price action based indicator. It just allows you to just kind of read things a little bit more at a glance. So anyway, the close of that candle, we went long, and I like to go one-to-one risk on my trades. Some people do differently, but I like one-to-one risk. And so, stop under the low, took that right up, and a nice move there. Okay, so that was trade number one. From there, as we came into this level that we had drawn out, bear in mind, from last week. Okay, so we had this as the beginning of the high volume node, but this was actually like the point of control, or the second high volume node in the middle. You can see how we rejected from that, like right off, almost right off of it, right? And then price started to consolidate. So our price action, from having this nice smooth price action, all of a sudden, we were getting choppy chop, right? Sideways price action. So we already knew we were expecting at the very least sideways. And at this point, I don't form a bias. We just sort of wait and see what the market gives us. And I was expecting a retest based on volume profile of some of these lower levels down here. I'll show you what I mean. So on this strong move up, right, if we just kind of take this impulse, there was a bunch of volume on this consolidation that we were expecting to retest, and potentially also down here, right? So we had basically these two zones very close together that we were expecting a retest, okay? So what happened was we got that pullback down, we tested this one, but I was still expecting a little bit of a deeper pullback, possibly even test the upper end of yesterday's range, because we never fully tested that from before. Here, I'll get rid of this trade so it stops flashing in our face. So essentially what we were looking for is, after this impulse down, a retracement, and then a continued short move. Now, the trade I mapped out here is how the trade really ideally should have been taken, but I'll show you how I took it. And I should have stuck with the ideal, but I got a little antsy. I think because the day before yesterday I missed a lot of trades, so I jumped the gun a little bit on it. But if we look at this consolidation here, you can see the high volume node right there. Okay, now I took the trade on this push here, and then it got this kind of first impulse down and didn't quite sort of make the move. And then you can see it retrace back up and touch that volume point of control from this consolidation. And that was the perfect short entry. You can see the reaction off of that, really strong reaction to the downside, filled our 1-1 target very easily. You could have also targeted, again, put your target right above some of these other high volume areas, like here, regardless. But that's the way I play it. So that, again, worked out really nicely. Now, at this point, price action was slowing down. And so we were watching the charts and kind of seeing what was going on here. After this pullback and we started to get some moves up, I was keeping my eye on the larger time frame, because on the larger time frame, right, this is the pullback that we were just looking at right here. It was this move up and then this pullback, and you can see this looks like just a very normal retracement on the 5-minute time frame, right? Very normal retracement. And then we had a couple things happen. So this is another script that we have built. And again, it's very similar. It's just measuring the aggressiveness of the buyers versus sellers. So all the green lines are your upswings and the red lines are your downswings. And basically, if they're pointed up, it's always just measuring the aggressiveness in relation to the previous swing, right? So if they're pointed up, it means that this kind of downward movement was less, or this one is more aggressive than this previous upward movement overall, okay? And then we can see this was a, not super aggressive upward movement, but then the retracement was even less aggressive. And that's kind of what I look for. If I'm going to trade what I consider to be just a breakout trade, meaning I'm not taking the entry, most of my entries are on limit orders, and I just take the entry based on the level that I want to get in on the trade. I don't wait for trade confirmation. But if I'm going to wait for a breakout and trade confirmation, which would be one of these signal bars, what I prefer to see is that the retracement down here, so this is your retracement leg, is weaker than the impulse was. So the fact that this is dark and it's very slightly pointed down tells us that this was a weak retracement. It wasn't a very strong retracement. And then we got a nice strong signal candle off of that. So again, you buy at the top of that candle. Same idea as that first trade, buying at the top of the candle. Now this one, I actually jumped out of this trade early. You can see because we were in all this resistance, I kind of knew it was a dicey trade and that there was a chance that we were going to get stuck here. And that's basically what happened. Whoops. These labels drive me insane sometimes. Here, let me see if I can just do this and get rid of these labels. Nope, that doesn't do it. I don't know how to get rid of that stuff. Compact stats mode, maybe that helps. Okay. Anyway, so, you know, we got this kind of push up, and then you can see price just kept getting stuck under that same resistance. So I actually took this trade off early, but it definitely would have gone on to be the winner. I wanted to go mow my lawn. I was really just didn't want to be stuck in this trade, and I felt like at this point, I personally always just tell people I trade probabilities, and at this point when price was getting stuck, I no longer felt like the probabilities were in my favor. I didn't feel like I had an edge anymore. I felt like at that point it was sort of a coin toss whether the price action was going to continue in my favor or not. So I thought it best to take off the trade and not take a loss on it. Also because I didn't know how long we were going to get stuck there, and I didn't want to be stuck there all day. I wanted to do other things. So I took that trade off. No big deal. Okay. And so that was that trade, but it did come out as a winner. And that was basically just a price action trade, not based on volume profile. Although you can see that it did really retest some of those higher volume areas from this impulse, right? So it really was a play off of this high volume stuff. It just sort of barely touched this lower one. And if you're buying it off that, I don't know if you would have gotten a fill, to be honest with you. This zone already got tested on this first push down. So that was that. I mowed my lawn, came back, and when I looked at the charts, I saw that we had pushed up above that major resistance level at 41. And again, I just, as a refresher, that resistance is coming from, here, let's get rid of this. The resistance is coming from here. See the high volume node right there? So this was the first, these were really close. That's why I put one level there, because it's almost as high as this one, and that was where our short was in the overnight session. But we had this was actually the point of control, the highest volume node. And so that was that upper level in there that we were just watching. So when I came back from mowing my lawn, again, my chart was on the 5-minute. I saw that we had pushed up above that, and now we were coming down and starting to retest. We were probably about here when I got back from mowing my lawn. So when I looked at this whole thing, I said, well, you know, what's this really bigger move? This is all really, if we look at price action, it's all really one move here, right? So when we're marking our major swing highs and swing lows, and this is so crucial when you're looking at your swing levels, right? So this is a low. This is, I guess, kind of a high, but it didn't break any structure. So really, you know, this is the high. Wow, that's not the right tool. Let's try that again. High, we had this retracement, right? And some people would do this, but that's not correct, because this low doesn't really matter from a structure standpoint. I mean, it kind of does, but this is our major low that ultimately led to our break of structure, right? This was the lowest point, retracing into here, and then we broke structure up. If this high were up here, then this low would matter, right? Because it's a new, fresh low that we're looking to break this structure up here. But it wasn't, right? So because of that, what we're looking at for our swings, major swing high, major swing low, major swing high. And basically what I said, okay, so this pattern is not playing on the 5-minute. Let me just make sure I get my stops and targets right. And where you can see the pattern more clearly is on the 15. Okay, so now you can see this was one move up, one move down. You can see the candles don't change color until we break this high. So that's what I wanted to see. That tells me the 15-minute chart is where I wanted to play this off of. And so what that means is we have to take this as one whole consolidation to get our entry level off of. Okay, so we don't want to just take the entry level off of here, meaning when I use my volume profile, we don't want to just take it off of here, even though it would have given us the same level. this stop can get taken out and still be within our bullish structure. So we don't want to focus on that as their stop. So we take the whole consolidation, right? The point of control is the same either way, but the stop placement is different when you look at that structure. And it wouldn't have mattered in this particular trade, but it will matter in others. And so this, again, high volume node, I front run them a little bit. I usually put my entry like 1 tick above or 2 ticks above, depending on price action. But that's how we got into that trade. Stop under this low. This is the major swing low, not this one. Okay, this low is the important one. And then we want our target to be at least 1-to-1 risk. Now you could have gone for more, but I went with the 1-to-1 risk. That's what I like to do on these trades personally. Okay, so that was the fourth trade of the day. It was basically taking off of the 15-minute chart, right? So that's a really kind of good example of how we trade the markets in the trade room using price action and volume profile. I use the volume profile to scalp the markets and usually get in anywhere from 2 to 4 trades a day. Usually I'm done trading by about 11:30 in the morning. It's a nice way to trade. It's a pretty relaxed way to trade, in my opinion, because I usually identify the levels I want to get in on the trade, several minutes in advance. So I'm not sitting there waiting for a bar to close or waiting for an entry signal with my finger on the mouse button where my whole arm and shoulder is tense. And I don't personally like trading like that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me personally. So this is what we do. This is how we use price action and volume profile to scalp the S&P 500 futures. If it's something that you're interested in, you can check out our trade room. It's at dpmtrades.com. And we do have a free area. You can just join the community for free and kind of get a feel for it. I think that's a good idea. I think there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, I think there's a lot of garbage out there when it comes to trading. I think there's a lot of people that are, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, I guess, dishonest when it comes to what they actually do. So, try out the trade room for free. Just join the general area. You can ask questions. You can kind of get a feel for, how we behave ourselves. And if it's something then you're interested in and you want to have more access to the live trading and screen sharing and voice commentary during the actual open session, as well as if you do want access to any of these indicators, I always tell people these are not necessary indicators. These are conveniences, but the indicators are just price action based indicators. They're not like moving averages, so they're not lagging in that way. And we don't take our entry signals really off of them. I mean, you can say yes in with these candles, but you could use your eyeballs for that. There's nothing magical about it. It just allows you to do it a little bit more at a glance. So anyhow, yeah, dpmtrades.com. You can join our community. I think we have a nice little community going. It's new, so it's small, a little bit more intimate. You can get a lot of help, ask a lot of questions. And if you're just looking to scalp futures, if you're looking to trade futures, I think it's nice to be in a trade room and have a community while you're doing it, mostly because I think it's kind of boring doing it by yourself. That's why I run the room. A lot of people ask, why do traders, if you're successful, why do you run a room? And for me, it's just that I enjoy the community aspect of it. I actually own 3 businesses. I don't rely on my trading for income. I'm doing just fine. I do use trading for income, but that's why we offer the free room as well, because for us, it's more about the community. I like having people to talk to while I trade. I like coaching people. That's what my career has been based on. My entire career has been based on coaching people in professional aspects, and that's kind of it. So yeah, that's how we do it. I hope you found this to be somewhat informative and get a feel for how you can use volume profile, both the session volume, but also a flexible or fixed range volume profile to aid you with your entries and exits when you are scalping intraday or swing trading or whatever time frame you really want to be using. So I'm going to hop off now. It's early in the morning. I'm actually going to get ready to do our pre-market analysis. Again, if you like this video, if you want to have the levels that we point out in the morning for our targets and stuff like that, then just hit subscribe. I think there's a little bell icon or something like that, allegedly, that you can hit and get alerted when we go live. I don't actually know how that works, but we're there usually almost every day, usually between 8:30 and 9. There are some days where I'm just doing other stuff and I don't get to the analysis, but I try to get there almost every day. So, all right, guys, happy trading, and I hope to see you sometime in our trade room.